One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave. Okay, this is going to be really weird because it's just Marla, right? So I have to always say that we can never forget that Dave is a 10-time Grammy Award-winning artist who travels the world sharing his love in song. So Dave's on his way home from Poland, and so I am honored today to be here. And before we get started with my intro for my guest, I got to remind everybody, we can't bring this show without your help. And the help we're asking for is for you to help us erase the stigma. So please text the word GIVE to 818-698-1021 and support our $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. Without us, or without you, there's no us. So please support. Okay, so today, super excited. We're honored, as always. And as every conversation we have, we say here on Mental Health Mondays, every conversation is worth both having and hearing. And today is no different. Val Van Galder is here with us on Mental Health Monday. Val's the CEO of Depression Cake Shop and is committed to changing the conversation around mental health through baking, sharing, fundraising. She's an award-winning marketing executive with over 25 years of marketing and brand building experience at Fox Searchlight, Sony Screen Gems. She's run a worldwide marketing for Sony Columbia Pictures, leading the department to record-breaking results in her consulting practice. She's been involved in global marketing strategies and campaigns for clients including 20th Century Fox, Sony Pictures, Disney, NBC Universal. Oh my goodness, my mouth is dry. I need to get some water. This is a lot.
This is too much.
It's just, you just sit back in that nice view and let me go here. Focus Features,
Okay.
Lionsgate, Amazon, and Apple. She's a walking powerhouse. So Val, can I call you Val?
You may call me Val.
Thank you so much for joining us here. This is the right place to be for this conversation and this topic. And we're glad you joined us on Mental Health Monday. So when we come back, we're going to get into our conversation with Valerie Van Galder right here on Mental Health Monday.
When Dave and Marla get together, it's hot.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's GIVE, to 818-698-1021 to donate. $1 today keeps the stigma away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
We want to officially welcome you to Mental Health Mondays. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. All right, so I wasn't kidding. That was, we always start here and then we want to dig in, dive under and get the story.
Okay.
So, because honestly, that's an impressive resume. And so I know, and first of all, I already know you're a humble spirit because you're like, no, don't talk about everything I've done. Don't say it, but you've done it. And so my question to you is, when I hear the word depressed cake shop, it almost is an oxymoron, because honestly, if there's anything I am is a cake person before a pie person, and cake makes me happy. So I want to find out how you got to the depressed cake shop and talk to me a little bit about, your background and your family. So go ahead. I'm gonna turn the floor over to you.
Okay. How can I do this briefly? Okay, so briefly, my background is I'm a girl from Orange County. I was born in Chicago. My parents from the Midwest. They
Me
got us all to.
too.
You're from Chicago? I
Yes, I was born in Chicago.
was born in Chicago, and then I moved to California. I was 6 months old. Ended up at UCLA through a long series of events I'll write about someday in a book. Ended up at a PR firm called Rogers and Cowan. I worked there for many years, did some other things, and then eventually ended up in movie marketing. And I loved it. I was quite good at it. I was enjoying it quite a bit. And when I was running Columbia Pictures marketing after the other marketing departments and things I had done that you mentioned, or it's sort of out of order, it doesn't matter. Anyway, my mother developed cancer and she got very ill, and my sisters lived out of town. So I was kind of juggling my job and taking care of my mother. But also, what underpinned a lot of this is that my father, when I was 30, had had a psychotic break very suddenly out of the blue and had kind of been gone from our lives for about 2 years. Like my mother was just like, you girls just go, I have two sisters, you go deal with your, grown up lives and I'll take care of dad. And it was really confusing and strange. No one explained it to us. And so that was just that. And then one day, a couple of years after that happened, he called me and said, hi, do you want to go out to lunch? And I said, Dad, what happened to you? And he's like, oh, the Goonies got me. We don't need to talk about that. So I was like, all right, fair. So anyway, that was in the background. So when my mom got cancer, I thought, I wonder if whatever happened to dad might happen again, because my mom and dad were very close and she was
Wait a
really
minute,
strong.
I have to stop you.
Yes,
so
sir. Ma'am.
Did your father say he had a psychotic break, or you just kind of surmised by events?
I'm going to get there. So basically, something happened because I'm kind of telling it to you in real time how we experienced it.
Right.
Something happened. He wasn't acting right. My mother did not explain it. And like I said, this went on for years. So there's a longer story to it. I'm trying to, again, we don't have a lot of time. But he just called me and said, let's, we should have coffee. And I said, what happened? And he just said, the Goonies got me and I don't want to talk about it. And we just pretended like nothing happened.
He said, the what got him? What got him?
The Goonies got me.
Goonies.
That was it.
Okay.
The Goonies got me. I don't want to talk about it. Is
Right.
what Dad said. Okay, so we went back to our, nice middle class, playing tennis, 3 kids. Everybody's grown up now. Mom and Dad are traveling, and so she got cancer, and I got kind of nervous. I thought, what if something happens to Dad? Well, so I was kind of managing all that. So anyway, she passed away, and he seemed fine actually, and he lived about an hour from me, and I checked in on him, but I was working on a lot of big movies, so I was kind of busy with my life. And then he ended up having a nice lady friend, and so my sisters and I were relieved. He seemed to be doing fine. And then one day I was at the James Bond junket, and he called me and he said, hi honey, I have to talk to you about something. I can't pay the bills anymore, I'm bankrupt, but I'm going to keep my Angels tickets and my country club membership. And I was like, oh boy, whatever happened to Dad, this is probably now like, I don't know, 16, 17 years before, is happening again. So I called my sister who lived in Boise and I said, can you come home? I have to get on a plane tonight to go to London. I'm working on James Bond. Can you go see what's wrong with Dad? So she came back to LA or to California, to Orange County. And it turned out he had a psychotic break, and she took him to the psychiatrist. Somehow she found the psychiatrist he'd been to when he had been sick all those years before. And they sent her home with a bottle of Cymbalta and said, good luck. And so she called me and she said, my dad, I mean, he was very sick. It's kind of a trigger warning thing. So she said, can you please come back? So I got on the plane, I came back, and then the two of us were just locked in my dad's house with like a baby monitor, trying to figure out what to do. And so finally I was just Googling, and I saw there was a geriatric psychiatric hospital at UCLA. So I called and I was like, hi, my name is Val, and I'm going to bring my dad into the psychiatric hospital. And they said, you can't unless he's a patient or he's homicidal or suicidal. Or he did many doctors. So anyway, the point of all of this is we eventually got him into the hospital through the emergency room. They recommended electroshock therapy. I was like, what are you talking about? He said, I've already had it. And so our whole life blew up. And what we finally discovered on that day, is that my dad had always had mental health issues, probably was bipolar.
You just weren't aware.
They just didn't tell us. So, and I found out much later that he was institutionalized, and the electroshock therapy that he mentioned he'd had when I was 4 years old.
Got it.
Which also now, many years later, explains a lot of the mental health stuff that I've had to deal with.
I was
from
going to say,
yeah.
if you feel like sharing, as we go into the next, we always have breaks, but what has that realization and impact done for you?
That would take us days to unpack, but so I'll briefly tell you that it made me realize a lot that I probably had anxiety, depression, ADHD my entire life. But the secondary point of the story is one of my earliest memories is at the age of 4, my mother saying, because I had 2 little sisters in very quick succession, you have to take care of your sisters. You have to be a big girl. So I became the parentified big girl at 4, and it had a lot of repercussions in my life. So anyway, cut to, as they say.
So you have 2
I have 2 younger sisters. Yes, I'm the oldest. And they were living out of state and they had little kids. And I wanted their little kids. I didn't have children. I had a boyfriend who had a daughter in London. So I was like, I can take care of this. I'm going to take care of my big job. I'm your job. It's my job.
I got it.
And I had it for about a year and 3 months. And then I imploded.
It's weird because, circumstances are different. But the one thing I will tell you is I want to add that to trauma because I've been there, and the I got it syndrome happens. For me, it started at 14. So I get what you're saying. Not only just hear you, I see you and I fully understand you. So I get it. So that's what happens. It's just, you know what?
You don't have a choice. Yeah.
Right. I almost felt like, growing up, okay, so, I've been groomed. Basically, my dad played with the White Sox, played with the Angels.
My dad was an Angels fan.
All right. Your dad would have known my dad. My dad was in the major leagues 40 years.
Oh, wow.
That's why
he had Angels tickets our whole life.
I was born in Chicago. So Bobby Valentine, all those guys were the guys in my life. But the point is that the method for me through him was sack up. There's I'm providing, so nothing else should matter. So therefore, I get what you're saying, and I always have to say that because, especially when people feel like you're lucky, like you're so.
Oh my God, I hear that
right.
all the time.
What did you become?
You guys are so what could be
wrong?
wrong?
You major league ball player. What? And I'm like,
club. You have a car.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about that. I want you to hang in there for 1 second, Val. We'll be back right after this break. We're going to continue our conversation. Great conversation, as always. Don't move. We'll be right back with more conversation with Val. Be right back.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
You're live, Marla.
All right. Cognitive behavioral therapy is a form of psychological treatment that combines 2 types of therapy: cognitive therapy, which examines the things that you think, and the behavioral therapy, which examines the things that you do. Grounded in understanding the relationship between how you think, feel, and act, and how each influences one another. This type of therapy is typically conducted by licensed mental health professionals. Dialectic behavioral therapy, which is DBT. Here's some types of CBT. Here's types of CBT that include dialectic behavioral therapy, rational emotive behavior therapy, which is REBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is ACT, exposure and response prevention, which is ERP. Always here on Mental Health Mondays, we ask if you feel that you or someone that you care about could benefit from cognitive behavioral therapy, please seek a professional. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave. And today, brought to you by Marla.
David is a thinker.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically live my personality on my scene.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
Well, it is rare that I find a solid common ground with one of our guests. But today I've done that with our guest, Val Van Galder. And Valerie and I just discovered that her father's love of baseball and my father's lifetime career in baseball have collided with similar teams. Exactly. And so, one of the things that, you and I were ending up with is just this expectation from the people around you that really dismisses any or won't validate anything that you feel that you're working through, because you should be so lucky. And so how does that play out, or how, and maybe not even my words, but how did your life play out for you with managing these issues? Because for me, it's much later that I realized the effects in a mental health way of the things that I had been trying to manage on my own, that you're trying to always balance and normalize. So let's jump right back in with that and find out, how did that manifest? ADHD, depression, what happened? What happened with you?
Like I said, it's, I've been on the planet a long time, so it's a long story. I think briefly, I struggled with all of these things my whole life. I recently went into my dad's office and got this box I hadn't seen since high school, and
Right.
it said, sorry, there's like light I'm trying to get up here.
Yeah, no, it's all good. There you go.
Okay. Basically, like excessive talking. Why is your schoolwork so messy? And I was really smart, and I eventually, as you mentioned, I had a really big career, but I have a hard time concentrating. I have like all the classic things that were not diagnosed when I was growing up, especially for a girl. And also my mom, if I'm really honest, I think she was so busy trying to project this perfect family that she didn't want to even think about anything being wrong with her kids. So it was like, don't you exhibit anything that is going on.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
with that. And we didn't know anything was wrong with that. Everything looked great. It's like, yes, my dad had a weird temper, and there are all these things now looking back. But, we had a lovely, like, privileged life. I mean, we lived in middle class Orange County. We went to school. We had clothes. We had everything. But there's always this underlying, like, something's a little weird, and my parents are pretty moody. So anyway, we did that. So I made it to UCLA, got out. Kind of to fast forward to get to Depressed Cake Shop. So when I started to figure out that my dad was sick and we finally got him into the hospital, my first thought was, this isn't right. Like the amount of aggravation and terror to try and finally get my dad into a hospital, get him treatment. And the treatment wasn't good. The electroshock therapy didn't totally work. We never really could get my dad 100% back to the kind of gregarious, wonderful person he was. So I felt very activated and motivated to do something. So I went out and I raised a bunch of money for NAMI, because the National Alliance of Mental Illness, excuse me, I reached out to them. Excuse me.
No worries.
And Sharon Dunas, who ran the Westside LA chapter, was so kind. She kept reaching out to me. And I was like, I don't even have time to come to your family therapy groups because I can't manage my life. So I felt like I didn't want anyone to ever have to go through what I was going through again. So it just got in my head that, like, I got to do something with mental health. So I reached out to Glenn Close's organization, Bring Change to Mind. I just started educating myself about, like, who's out there, who's working in this space, how can I help? Simultaneously, and finally in 2009, I quit my job in a flurry of, like, ran out screaming for my giant job and really destroyed my career for about a minute. I cobbled it back together a little bit. But when I did that, I was kind of lonely and bored. I was married to someone who lived in London. I never had anything to do in London. I didn't have a job. So I started taking cake decorating.
Did you say London?
Yeah. It was part of what was hard about my life, is I was managing a relationship in London, a job in California, sick parents in Orange County. And as much as I like to think I can handle it, at some point it was too much. I broke. So I've always managed my anxiety, I now realize, through arts and crafts. You can see I talk a lot with my hands. I sew, I knit, I crochet. The box I found in Dad's office is full of all my art projects. So I was in London, bored, and I started taking these cake decorating classes. And then, because ADHD, part of it is you get really hyper fixated on things. I got really hyper fixated on cake decorating.
I call that sticky, but yes, keep going.
Well, I call it passion. But it's hyperfixation, but it makes me happy. I have a lot of really interesting skills that I'm very interested in. So I started reading about cake decorating, and I read that this woman was doing a one-day pop-up called the Depressed Cake Shop. It was going to be a one-day pop-up in London, England, on Brook Lane. It was being organized by a woman named Emma Thomas. And her pitch was, because she's a PR person, that it would get more attention if it had this kind of unusual name, Depressed Cake
Right.
Shop, which really appealed to me as a marketer. And all the cakes are going to be, excuse me, I'm talking fast, so I know we have a short time. The cakes were going to be gray because depression is ugly and it casts an ugly gray cloud over a beautiful life. And I was like, that's fantastic. I want to get involved. But my dad got sick again, so I had to go back to California. What happened? A Facebook group grew around this idea. It turns out, and you're not going to be surprised because you have Mental Health Mondays, sensitive people, the Venn diagram between sensitivity and mental health issues, art and mental health issues,
Yeah.
a lot of you find a lot of kindred spirits when you walk into a world of creativity. So all these bakers around the world start going, hey, I want to do one. I want to do one. I want to do one.
Mm-hmm.
So one popped up in San Francisco. We popped up one in LA. Emma moved on. It was early days of Facebook, not that early, but kind of early. I opened a Facebook page. We opened an Instagram page, and suddenly it just started to blossom,
To grow.
And so we
you connected with other people.
Connected. Yeah. And we connected so organically, like it's just, people loved the idea and it just changed my life so much for the better. I made friends all over the world. I traveled. I went to Boston. I went to Pittsburgh. I went to Portland, Oregon. I went to Scotland. It was fantastic. And it still is fantastic. So it's a very grassroots effort. I'm the only person who works there. It is now a 501c3. So I have a beautiful board of directors who I can rely on if I need help. But what the pop-ups were going fantastic. 250, we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then COVID happened. And then the pop-ups kind of like, And so we're 10 years old this year. It's still kind of, bubbles along, but we're in a kind of a growth phase. I'm trying to decide like what's going to happen with it next. It's always available to anyone who wants it. I've made the barrier to entry very low so that anyone who wants to bake some cake and raise some money for mental health charities is allowed to.
Let me be clear so I can get clear for myself.
Okay.
So what is the function of what you do? Is it that so let's just say that I want to come in and it's going to alleviate my anxiety and maybe even in a depressed state to bake. Am I going to get to come in and bake for free? Am I eating the cake? Because I don't know. Help me.
Okay. So you can do all of the above. Okay. So first and foremost,
bake it and eat it.
You can bake it and eat it. Okay. So baking is a form of, you're talking about CBT and DBT.
Yes.
Baking is behavioral activation.
Yes.
Behavioral activation, most arts and crafts is it almost like a mindfulness practice. You have to stay so deeply in the moment that perseveration becomes difficult. Anxiety is at bay. You're concentrating.
Nice.
So I find the act of baking incredibly soothing, as do many people around the world. In fact, there is a panoply of baking mental health cookbooks that are coming out all over the place right now. And I'm actually, there's a new one called Mind Over Matter by a guy named Jack, and I'm going to be interviewing him on Mother's Day. There's one called Bread Song about a young girl in England, in Oxfordshire, who her dad didn't know what to do with her. She was so severely depressed. He had her bake a loaf of sourdough. She's now the most famous young baker in the world. She's been traveling. She's amazing. Her name's Kitty Tate. I highly recommend you look into her.
Wait, hold on, Val. I will look into her, but you are so full of information. Don't stop. Stay right there. Take this quick break, and we'll be right back to finish.
Okay.
All right. So Val.
Yeah.
I need you.
Okay. How much time do I have left? I need to wrap this up.
No, Val, I need you now because I need you. I'm going to read the poll question. You're going to get to answer last week's poll and the poll, and then we'll see how you fare. These are fun but statistical questions that we ask. Last week we asked what percentage of Americans will meet the criteria for a diagnosable mental health condition at some point in their lifetime. Is that
1 in 5?
I'm gonna give you some
percentage. Okay.
Exactly. 27%, 35%, and 46%. Again, the question, what percentage of Americans will meet the criteria for a diagnosable mental health condition at some point in their lifetime? A, 27%, B, 35%, or C, 46%?
I'll say 27 just because I've always heard 1 in 5. No?
What I'll say about you is, I think our last guest also may have gone a little bit light on this one, but that tells me you're optimistic. But the realistic answer is 46%. But
wow,
isn't that crazy? That's not. You're not done. You're not done, Val. We're not done with you. We're never done with you.
I'm not leaving. Okay.
No, you can't leave because your view is too great. Here's the thing. The second question for next week that I'm going to ask is, what percentage of Americans have a diagnosis of schizophrenia? A, less than 1%, B, 8%, or C, 13%. Don't think about last week's poll. Think about the question and answer it based on what you would believe, because there's a lot of different diagnoses.
I'm going to say 8%.
Okay. Now here's what I'm going to say. I receive your answer and I accept it, but you won't know the answer until next week.
Okay. I just went in the middle. I know it's not 1%. I don't think it's 1%, and I don't know. I don't, because schizophrenia I feel is a little rarer. Yeah. So I went right in the middle.
It is my. And by the way,
I should have studied a little bit more.
My son suffers. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's bipolar 1 with schizoaffected, but.
Schizoaffected.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But, yeah. All right. So. Before we go, I just want to remind everybody, $1 today keeps the stigma away. Please text GIVE to 818-698-1021 to join us in our $1 today keeps the stigma away campaign. We'll be right back with more conversation with Val. Stay tuned. All right, so we're back. So you were updating me right quick, because this always goes by way too fast. You're amazing.
Too fast.
It is too fast. It's always too fast.
I could talk to you all day. I have a lot to talk about.
I have a phone number down.
All right, well, I'm going to reach out to you. Okay.
But you were talking to me about the actual people that you were naming others that have joined. Like, so continue. Right,
okay, so I kind of want to get to Depressed Cake Shop, since I am a marketer to market my project. Okay, so basically what I was saying rather inarticulately is that baking is good for your mental health on several. It's good because it's an enjoyable activity. It's good because it helps you connect with others. And the act of baking and sharing has proven to be incredibly beneficial, not only to me, but to many people around the world. There is evidence-based research that proves my point. So how do you get involved in the Depressed Cake Shop? You can bake a cake and give it to your neighbor. You can decide, like me, you want to raise money for a mental health charity, and you pick the mental health charity and you reach out to them. You say, can we do a Depressed Cake Shop? And you call your friends, or you bake cakes yourselves. It's really, it's an incredibly fluid and flexible organization. It's very inclusive. And if you want to ask me any questions, you can email me at val@depressedcakeshop.com. We have a website, depressedcakeshop.com or .org, with lots of information on it. If you still don't know what to do, email me, call me. I'm happy to help you. Cake shops pop up all over the world all the time. There's one actually coming up in New Hampshire soon. And I'm going to plug one thing we're doing. We're doing an event in LA called Hollywood in Mind on May 11th, which is the first ever event for this new organization. We're doing an entire day of the intersection between storytelling and mental health to help Hollywood understand.
I have to promote this. Hollywood in Vine.
Hollywood in Mind. Hollywood in Mind.
Hollywood in Vine.
Hollywood in Mind. Mind, like mind, mindfulness, mind.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Hollywood in Mind.
It's okay. It's my fault. I'm a big mumbler. Hollywood in Mind.
Okay.
May 11th at the United Talent Agency in Beverly Hills, California. A whole day of events with amazing guests. We're going to do a little mini Depressed Cake Shop there. So if anyone wants to bake for us and you're anywhere in the vicinity of Beverly Hills, give me a call. You can get involved. And so I'm on the board of advisors for that. The other thing is my little sister and I are going to be the keynote speakers at the Mental Health Marketing Conference in Tennessee in the fall. So mainly my sister and I Franklin, Tennessee. We want to spread the word that we need to talk more about mental health. We need to tell the story of our family. We need to talk about how we need to all support each other. There's no shame and there's no stigma. And we also want to, I like to promote creativity is a really powerful form of self-care, because it's how I have taken care of myself since I was a little kid, because I managed my stress through creativity, and I would like to encourage others to give it a try in addition to medication, therapy, visits to your doctor. It's one of the tools in my mental health toolkit.
Wow. Well, let me tell you, you have stomped all over familiarity and contact and connection with us because we were in Nashville before we came to LA. So two of my children were born in Nashville.
I've never been.
But you're gonna speak in September in Franklin, know it very well. But the bottom line is I cannot say how grateful we are to have you on Mental Health Mondays. And listen, we are doing work independently but collectively. And I'm so grateful for every story that connects us because we're all suffering. It is the most preposterous thing I've ever seen. I'm like, now we're finally able to say it, but in reality, we haven't really been able to, I always say, see something, say something, do something. So I appreciate you for doing something with what you've experienced and making a difference. And not just that, taking the time to speak out because your story and what you're doing to make a difference is going to impact someone differently than what I may be doing. But if we can all connect our stories and we can all hold hands and we can all connect arms in this fight, because your mental wellness matters. So I really, 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 really appreciate you showing up here with me today, Val. I promise you. And we will be in touch.
Please stay in touch. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak to you. It was really an honor, and I'm really grateful.
Does a great job because we walk in lockstep, but Dave and I have pretty crazy lives. So I appreciate it. Times 1,000. So thank you. And whatever you're doing, I wrote all that down. That's why I was looking down. I was writing it down so I can follow and be a part as ever I can be a part in anything that you guys are doing. If nothing else, I can share the message, and I intend to. So thank you so much. And you're welcome in Mental Health Mondays anytime.
Oh, thank you. I'll be back. You should meet my sister. I'm going to introduce you to my sister.
You tell your sister to get her butt on here.
Oh, she's the best. What she's doing blows me out of the water. But anyway, thank you so much for having me.
Marla Thomas from Mental Health Monday said, get your butt on here.
I'm going to send you a whole dossier on her.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank
Val.
you.
We'll
have a great week. Bye.
Thanks again.
I really appreciate you guys. Thank you. Bye.
For sure. Bye-bye.